An 11-year-old vanishes on her walk to the bus stop. For 18 years, she's hidden in plain sight in a backyard. She's answering the door. She's taking calls for a print shop while parole officers visited that house more than 50 times. We are going to examine today what the system missed, what finally worked, and how Jaycee finally found a way to write her name again. Hey y'all, welcome to Killer Queens, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Torella, and like most millennials, I've always had an obsession with true crime. On KQ, you'll find light true crime stories, millennial hypes and gripes, some adult language, and maybe a special guest here and there. Just like a 90s sleepover, we're just a couple BFFs hanging out, so gather round and let's launch right into it. Okay, you guys, we are talking about the abduction of Jaycee Dugard, and there is a Cold Case Files episode. It's kind of like a mini movie, almost, I would say. It's longer. It's hosted by my first husband, Bill Curtis. I love him. I love everything about him. My third husband is obviously Frank Sinatra. We don't talk about my second husband, first husband, Bill Curtis. All right, that was dumb, but it's a joke we have. Anyway, I'm alone today. Nikita went to London and she did learn that you can be overwhelmed and underwhelmed. And in Europe, you can be just whelmed. But I'm trying to give her a little time to rest because jet lag. So I'm taking this one solo, guys. And I can do it. I can do it. We can do it. We've got this together, right? By the way, if you've never been here before, I'm Torella. Hi. And this is Killer Queen / This Feels Criminal because we're still in the process of the name change. So let's do it. I also do want to tell you that this episode is going to make you so angry that, as Nikita would say, you're going to have to find somebody to fist fight in the parking lot. As I would say, you're going to throw all your shit out the window. There is so much that should never have happened, should have been caught, should not have fallen through the cracks, that the anger that we feel all together, because this is now a support group for each other, there are no words. There are no words for the level of anger you are going to feel, okay? I do want to give a hey girl thanks to Beth for writing this one up. Thank you. And she also read Jaycee's book called A Stolen Life. And she really did the Lord's work on this episode. It was requested by Marissa Seymour, Carly Boddick, Alyssa Crabtree, Brianna Huizar, Rachel, Salome Pash. Thank you for that. Oh my gosh, what is the word? Pronunciation. I kept wanting to say prescription. And Amber Rose. Thank you guys so much. This one was requested like a whole heck ton. All right. Hopefully I do it justice. I really was so very angry. The only thing that soothed me at all was the sound of Bill Curtis's voice. All right. We are going to begin this story on June 10th, 1991 in South Lake Tahoe, California. So Jaycee Lee Dugard, who is in 5th grade at this time, she's 11 years old, is getting ready for her last day of school of the 5th grade, okay? She and her family had moved to South Lake Tahoe 9 months earlier. Jaycee was described as very quiet. She kept to herself. She was very into her schoolwork, very well behaved, all of those things, right? Now, that morning, Jaycee's mom was running late for work. And in the abduction of Jaycee Dugard, she talks about how she had been late. I believe it was a Monday, and she had been late like the past couple of Mondays in a row or whatever. And she really didn't want to get in trouble at work and she wanted to be on time and she had been running late that morning. And so she just hurried out the door and she did not kiss Jaycee goodbye that morning. She just got out of there and was like, I got to get to work. I'll see her later. Right. That absolutely breaks my heart, especially as a mom. Obviously, you don't have to be a mom for that to break your heart. But oh my gosh, because it's just like, you do take those moments for granted where you're like, oh my gosh, we're just going to have to figure this out. Like I'll see you in a little bit, or I've got to go. We've got to get out the door. And just not realizing that's the last time she was going to see her daughter. Just terrible. So she gets on out to go to work. Jaycee is going to go to her bus stop, okay? They live in a neighborhood. She's going to go catch the bus to get to school that morning. She does this every single morning. Jaycee's stepdad was working in the garage as she's leaving for the bus stop. So he's outside working on a car and he sees her. Okay, this is the other insane thing, okay? He sees her walking to the bus stop and he sees a car come down the hill, circle the house, go back up the hill, stop the car right there in the road. Somebody jumps out, grabs Jaycee. They get her into the car. They take off. He saw it happen and he's like, oh my God, they just put her in a car. He sees the kidnapping, right? He's like, oh my God, I have to chase them. So, well, he's working on his car, so he can't drive his car. So then he's like, shit, what am I going to do now? So he jumps on a bike and he's trying to pedal as fast as he can to get to them, but it's too late. I mean, the car is already gone. So he calls 911 and he says, hey, my stepdaughter is walking to the bus stop. Somebody stopped a car, grabbed her, put her inside. They abducted her. You know, I saw it happen. It was a gray Ford. It was a car and it was a gray Ford. So obviously, she doesn't make it to the bus stop, right? And so there are other kids on the bus. The kids did not see this happen. There are other kids on the bus, and the bus stop is there, or the bus is at the stop, like waiting for her to get up there. And she doesn't make it onto the bus. And the kids on the bus start to realize something is really, really wrong when the police come onto the bus and start asking questions. And they're like, hey, you know, have you seen Jaycee? Do you know anything about where she might be? Like all that kind of stuff. And she had a really good friend, Nicole, you know, who at the time was like, I was going to sit with her on the bus. Like we always, you know, we did everything together. We're really good friends. And all of a sudden she's just not on the bus. And now the police are here asking questions about her. Like, oh my gosh, terrifying. After the abduction, she ends up being driven 107 miles to Antioch, California, where she was locked in a soundproof shed on Philip Garrido's mother's property. We will get to him. All right, so this is incredible. It's incredible. I'm just so happy she's alive. But we have Jaycee's perspective of this. So in her book, she talks about what happened. And she also did this like very in-depth interview with Diane Sawyer that I watched. So she talks about this car had pulled up next to her and the man rolls down his window and he started asking her for directions. And then she said that his hand shot out of the window so fast that she couldn't register what was happening. And then she saw something black in his hand, heard a crackling sound, and then she was paralyzed. So he tased her right there. Again, what is wild to me is this is in broad daylight. Her stepdad sees this happen. He just can't get there fast enough. But like, this is broad daylight, you guys. So the car door opens and she said she started scooting on her hands and butt toward the bushes as fast as she could. But then somebody picks her up and they carry her to the car. She tried to resist, but she was tased again. And she said she peed her pants and she was yelling like, no, 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 no. She gets put into the backseat of the car and then they put a blanket on top of her. And she felt something with weight on top of her as well. I don't know what it was, but they put something like heavy on top of her. And she could hear voices in the car, but she couldn't make out what they were saying. So when they get to Antioch, Jaycee was led into a house where Philip forced her to take a shower with him. He shaved her legs, her armpits, and her vagina after asking her if she had ever done it, had sex. She's 11, by the way. He also forced her to touch his penis. Now, at this point, this is a 100% sexual assault. At this point, though, nothing else happens. And I'm certainly not saying that's nothing, but I think you know what I mean, because it's going to get worse. He then had her wrap herself in a towel, and then he takes her into the hidden backyard within a backyard. This is so annoying to me for so many reasons. We'll get into it. But basically, there was the house, and then there's like the backyard. And then there was like this like makeshift fence, tarpy, campy area inside of that, like a backyard within a backyard. It looks weird. It looks like it's not supposed to be there. It looks like something that a parole officer might say, hey, what do you got going on back there? I bet I should take a look around back there. But we'll get to that. Anyway, that's where she was. He did not give her any clothes, and she was handcuffed with fuzzy handcuffs unless he was in the room with her to eat. I guess that was a small kindness he did, the fuzzy handcuffs, so they wouldn't hurt her wrists as bad. And for the first week, she was alone in the room in the backyard. Philip would bring her fast food and soda only. And she said, I relied on him for everything. If I was going to, first of all, live or die, but if I was going to get any food, it came from him. If I was going to get any human interaction, it came from him, anything like that. After about a week, Philip came into the room with a milkshake and told her that she could have it after they were done. Oh God, it's just terrible. After they were done. She didn't know what that meant. So, she talks about in her interview and in her book that she was 11 at the time, okay? And they had not had the sex talk yet. She didn't know what sex was. She didn't know what that meant. She didn't know how it worked, like none of that stuff. So she didn't know what to expect. And she said this was the first time that he raped her. After that, he would come in the room and rape her so often. I mean, she had absolutely no idea how many times it happened. And she said she would just sort of let herself daydream while it was happening so she didn't have to think about it. Her brain would go somewhere else. I cannot imagine. And he told her, he said, look, you are actually saving other people from me by being the one that I do this with. Of course, he wasn't like by being the one that I rape. He positioned it as we are sleeping together, but he positioned it to her as, I've got something wrong with me. I can't stop this. But if it wasn't you, it would be lots of other girls. And so you are saving other people. And she, she said in some ways she genuinely believed that. I mean, I think she still would have gone back home if she had the chance. But, he's telling her this as a child. It's just terrible. Eventually, he took her to the building next door where he would go on runs, is what he called them, which would consist of basically him doing a ton of drugs and acting out his fantasies with her, and he would videotape them as well. He would dress her up in certain ways. He would have her do certain things. He would do certain things. And these would all be on what he called a run, which she said was basically a binge. And he would just be like super, super high on like meth or whatever. But he'd stay up for like days. So these things would last a really long time. And then she said after he was done, he would cry and he would say he was sorry and he would, all of this stuff. Ugh, disgusting. Eventually, she stayed in the next door building, which was like a tent, for quite a while. All right. And then she started getting another visitor. Guess who? Guess who her visitor was? Philip's wife, Nancy. Philip lived with his wife. His wife was in the car when he abducted her. She helped him abduct her. This woman knew that her husband had an 11-year-old child outside that he was raping, that they had abducted together. Okay. So Nancy starts bringing her meals, toys, books, stuff like that. Sometimes they'd all sleep there. Sometimes they'd all watch movies and eat together. Philip did tell Jaycee that Nancy was jealous of her, but was trying not to be jealous. Like, what is happening? Of course she's jealous. This is somebody that your husband is sexually attracted to and is coming out here to have sex with all the time. But like, this is not an adult person. Like, and this is a person he stole. You stole too. She's a human. You stole her. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's infuriating. And Jaycee said that, like, thinking back on it, Nancy had several opportunities to let her go, but obviously never did. And at one point, Philip had even been sent back to prison for a month early on in her abduction, but Nancy didn't let her go then either. Ooh, what is happening? Throughout her time there, 18 years, They got her several kittens, but they would always take them away from her for some reason or another. She would write about these kittens in her journal. Her journals are, oh my God, they will make you sob because they're so sweet. And they're just little, you can, oh my God, you can just see that she's a child. Like, she's a child, but seeing what she's writing in her journal is just like, she's a baby. Oh my gosh, it's so sad. Now, as far as the investigation goes, Jaycee is abducted. The local law enforcement agencies were alerted. There was a limited description given out. Jaycee's stepfather came up with a description of a woman with long dark hair, straight hair, sharp, distinctive features, and dark skin. The description of the car was a gray four-door sedan, but he did not get a good look at the male driver. So Nancy's the one who actually abducted her. There was no physical evidence. The only thing to go on was what the stepdad told them. And he became a suspect. He was questioned repeatedly as he was the last person to have seen her. Terry, Jaycee's mother, was devastated, but did all she could to cooperate with the police. And then they did end up getting divorced later on. It's terrible. All of it's terrible, right? Like, it's, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. But there are those ripple effects, right? And this just put a lot of stress on their marriage. Teams of local officers and FBI agents were searching the neighborhood, forest. They were going door to door. They got Jaycee's photo out to the public regionally and then nationally. Thousands and thousands of calls and leads came in. They followed every tip, every possible theory. They followed up on all of it, but they never were able to find anything. I don't want to say never were able. They didn't find anything. Again, we'll get to that. So in South Lake Tahoe, California, at this point, parents are concerned about letting their kids go play. They don't want them walking to the bus stop. They didn't know if it was random, if it was something that was going to happen again. Is somebody targeting our kids? That kind of thing. The lead investigator, Jim Watson, said that his wife worked where Jaycee went to school. His kids had gone to that school. He took this very personally. He wanted to do everything he could to bring Jaycee home. Now, 6 months after the abduction, Jaycee is still not found. And most people believed that she had died by this point and that she would not be found, but understandably so. 200 miles away in the Bay Area, cases like Jaycee's were common. Between 1988 and 1991, 5 girls had gone missing, and there was concern that there was a serial abductor. Initial investigation was pretty immediate. It was very intense. But they started looking into some of those other cases, and they found some similarities to the 1988 abduction of 9-year-old Michaela Garrett. So this is November 19th, 1988, Hayward, California. Okay, this is another story that's going to absolutely break your heart. I mean, it's fucking terrible. Sharon, Michaela's mom, tells the story. And she says that she let Michaela and her friend Katrina ride their little scooters to the corner store for the first time. This was the first time that she ever let her daughter ride her scooter to the store. They wanted to go get some candy. And she was like, no, I can't go with you right now. You can't go. And Michaela was like, look, Katrina's with me. We'll go together, all that stuff, right? And she's like, it's just right down the street. We're just going to get some candy. We're going to come back, right? And her mom was like, okay, you know what? You guys are together. It is right down the street. What could happen, right? Oh my God, it's so sad. Before the girls left, Michaela turned around and told her mom that she loved her. Sharon was like, I love you too. See you in a few minutes, right? You really don't think that much about it. So the girls ride their little scooters to the store and they leave them outside. They go inside for candy. And when they come out, one of the scooters is gone. And Michaela saw it resting by a car in the parking lot. Okay. This absolutely terrifies me. And I have to say, if you ever drop something, leave something, whatever, and you come out, I feel like I need to tell them, I don't let my kids go anywhere by themselves. Oh my God. They'll be 25 being like, Mom, can I please go to the store by myself? None of you live with me. I'm coming with you. Anyway. But if something of yours has now been moved and is next to a car, do not go near it. Go inside and stay with the store clerk and call your mom or the police or whatever. If you walk out to your car and there is something underneath your car that you would need to move to get out, do not touch it. Go back inside, wherever you were. Make a phone call. Get around other people. It just, oh God, it's so scary. So anyway, they come out. One of the scooters is over by this car. And so Michaela is the one that sees it. And so she goes around to get it and she yells out to Katrina, hey, I found the scooter. And so Katrina just goes to get the other scooter, which was close to the door. And then she hears screaming. She turns her head and she sees Michaela being taken in a car. Okay. So the man gets out of the car, picks Michaela up, kicking and screaming, puts her in the car, drives away. Katrina runs into the store. She tells the clerks. They call 911. The suspect was a white male in his 20s. He had pale skin, acne complexion, thin, long, raggy, dirty blonde hair. And Sharon was like, I was positive it would be solved really quickly, right? We had a description of the man. We had a description of the car. Katrina eyewitnessed it, like she saw it happen, but it wasn't quick. 3 years later, Michaela was still missing, and that's when Jaycee goes missing. The cases were very similar. And if you look at pictures of Michaela and Jaycee, they both have blonde hair. They look fairly similar. They don't look exactly alike by any means, but there are similarities. This is a very, very, very high risk abduction. Both of them are, right? Daylight, it's outside with witnesses around. Like there are literally other people watching it occur who are trying to follow you in the moment. And he gets away. I mean, these are very similar in the way that they were carried out. FBI tried to find common suspects, but after 3 years, they still couldn't find anything. So at this point, we are 3 years after Jaycee's abduction. And by the way, Michaela has never been found. Oh my God. All right. And that was almost 40 years ago at this point. All right. So now we're 3 years after Jaycee's abduction. They don't know, the investigators, her family, nobody knows that Jaycee has turned 14 in captivity and she gave birth to a baby girl with no medical assistance. She's 14. Okay. She did not know she was pregnant at first. So she tells us that on Easter Sunday in 1994, Jaycee was able to eat Easter dinner prepared by Philip's mother with Philip and Nancy. Now, this was a change because before that, they would only give her fast food. Okay. They didn't give her home cooked meals. They didn't give her, healthy, good food. Right. But on this day, they let her eat a full meal with them, which was not the norm. They tell her to close her eyes, Philip and Nancy. And when she opened them, she was surprised with an Easter basket that contained 2 Easter bunnies, one that was a boy and one that was a girl. And she's like, oh, thank you. Like, I love it. Like, thanks a lot. Then they started telling her like, hey, we've been watching you lately. You've been gaining some weight. You're kind of waddling. You're not really walking. And she's like, well, yeah, I knew I was gaining weight, but I didn't know I was walking differently. And they said, look, we think that you are pregnant. And she was really worried because she said, I don't know how I can give birth. Like, I know that people have babies in hospitals. That's where they're born. That's where my mom had my little sister. But I don't have a hospital. I don't have anything like that. And she also thought about having to give her baby up for adoption. But as her pregnancy went on, she was like, no, I'm keeping this baby. She felt less alone with the baby in her belly. She said she felt like she had somebody to talk to and tell stories to him. And she was really, really excited to have this baby. So Philip rented birthing videos and he and Jaycee would watch them together, along with shows on TLC about childcare and parenting. Does it make you want to hit him? It makes me want to hit him. When Jaycee's contractions first started, she did not know what was happening and nobody had come to check on her yet that day because remember, she stays locked in a room by herself all the time until they come in to feed her or check on her or whatever. So finally, Nancy comes to check on her and realizes, oh my gosh, she's in labor. So they go get Philip. Now, she was in labor for, I almost said years, for hours and hours before anybody came to check on her. So Nancy goes to get Philip. So Philip and Nancy come back. Nancy was a nursing aide. I mean, like that matters really, but they delivered the baby. And at one point, she said that Philip had to reach in and pull the cord from the baby's neck because it was wrapped around the baby's neck. Jaycee's first daughter was born on August 18th, 1994 at 4:35 a.m. And she wrote, "I am 14 years old and very, very scared." Oh my gosh. At age 17, Jaycee gave birth to another daughter. Jaycee realized she was pregnant again at 17. And when she told Philip, he was really happy. He was like, "I'll take care of everything." And Jaycee said that at this time, he had been having less runs and raping her less because he said that God had cured him of his problem and he would no longer be having sex with her. Okay. I think, I don't know this to be a fact, but I think God, quote, cured him of this problem because Jaycee was 17 and he's not sexually attracted to girls that are 17 and older. He's attracted to little girls. He's a pedophile. She's not attractive to him anymore. That's what I think. But I don't know. Nancy told Jaycee that she and Philip secretly would videotape young girls at the park doing splits and other things. So she didn't think that his problem was cured because he was still doing this after he says his, quote, problem was cured. Again, she's helping him do this. We see one of the videos. He would go to parks, registered sex offender, okay? And we'll get to that. He would go to children's parks and he would bring a guitar and he would play music and he would have Nancy film him doing it. And then they would kind of like talk in code or whatever. And he'd be like, "Can you see me real good?" And she's like, "Oh, I can see you real good." But what he is asking her is, "Are you getting good close-ups of all of these little girls around me?" And that's what she would be filming. Can we fight Nancy and Philip in a parking lot? I mean, all right. So he's still filming all this stuff, whatever. But I think that he wasn't attracted to her anymore. She's too old. 17, too old. Also at this time, Philip had built a fence around the yard. So Jaycee was now allowed to go outside with her first daughter, and we will call her A. She was looking forward to the family barbecues that they promised that they would all have together. Baby S was born on November 13th, 1997 at 2:15 a.m. And shortly after she was born, they decided the name S did not suit her and she was now G. Again, we are leaving their names out to protect their privacy. Nancy continued to be jealous of Jaycee, so Philip told Jaycee that she and the girls needed to call Nancy mom. He wanted Jaycee's daughters to think that Nancy was their mom and that Jaycee was their sister. So Nancy wouldn't get jealous. Then they told Jaycee she had to pick a different name. You can't be Jaycee, like, obviously. She said that Alyssa Milano was her favorite actress, so she decided to use the name Alyssa, but she wanted it to be spelled Allissa instead, so she became Alyssa, who was now known as her daughter's sister. The three girls were hidden in a shed on the compound on Philip Garrido's mom's property. And they talked to her about the fact that, remember, one of the first things that she said once she was in captivity was she relied on Philip and Nancy for everything. And so she talks about in her book and her interviews and all the things that, like, when you living in captivity like this, when somebody has abducted you, you depend on them for everything: food, clothing, shelter, all of those kinds of things. And, again, any human interaction really. Now, when she had her daughters, she had them as far as like emotional and, and things like that. But she still relies on them so much, right? And she really, she took upon herself, God, she's just such the sweetest person. She was very, very serious about teaching her daughters as much as she could teach them. She did like a little school curriculum with them. She read with them, all of these things. She's like, I only had a 5th grade education, so I would try to learn things. I would, try to find ways to teach them things and, all that kind of stuff. She, oh my God, 14 years old. She's an amazing mother. I mean, it's incredible. What a sweet person. And I know she's older than me, but like, oh my gosh. But she said, with Philip and Nancy, she developed some sort of a relationship with them, and they were the only people that she had at that point, other than her children. And so there wasn't a love there necessarily, but there certainly was a dependence. And then out of that dependence did grow some sort of a relationship, When baby G was 2, Philip and Nancy started taking Jaycee, or Alyssa as she was called, on outings. They dyed her hair brown. They gave her big baggy clothes to wear. And she always wondered if somebody would recognize her as the missing girl, but nobody ever did. And she wrote in her journal, I was nobody. Nobody saw me. Actually, I think she wrote that in her book. Sorry, not her journal. Back in Lake Tahoe, there's no word on Jaycee after a year. Terry never gave up hope. She never stopped looking for her daughter. For 4 years, Jaycee's case was Jim Watson's full-time job. He had lots of leads. He did covert operations. By 1995, though, Jaycee's case went cold, and the police have absolutely no idea who took her. All right. Now we're going to go back. We got to go back, okay, to 1976, November 22nd, Lake Tahoe, Nevada. This is when 25-year-old Katie Calloway had stopped at a convenience store, and when she was pulling away, a man taps on her window and says, "Hey, I can't get my car started. Could you please give me a ride down the street?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." She said he looked normal. He looked nice. He looked, it was the 70s. He had long hair, but he looked fine, like he looked like a normal guy in the 70s, right? He did not look like he was going to do what he did. So she gives him a ride. She said it was a cabin on a side street. And when she turned to look, he slammed her head into the steering wheel and he grabbed handcuffs. She said she was yelling at him to stop. And he said, "All I want is a piece of ass. If you cooperate, you won't get hurt." Wow. The man was Philip Garrido, who was also 25 at the time. He drove Katie an hour and a half to his rented storage unit in Reno, Nevada. She said inside the storage unit, there were stacks of porn magazines. There was an 8mm projector. There were rugs on the walls, obviously to soundproof it. Do you think he's done this before? For 6 hours, he held Katie captive. He repeatedly raped her. And then all of a sudden, there was pounding on the door. And when she asked who it was, he said it was the heat. For little baby children who were born like in the 2000s and later, the heat is the police. I don't think anybody calls them the heat anymore. So he's like, "Look, are you going to be good or do I need to tie you up?" And she's like, No, I'll be good. So he goes out to see what's going on and like try to talk them out of whatever it is and like to get them away. And the way that it's like a storage unit, but I think he had multiple units or whatever. So maybe he I don't know if they connected or what, but it was like he walked through another room to get to where they were at. So he goes out there to see what's going on. And she's like, No, don't worry about me. I won't say anything. Like you told me you'll leave me alone. If I don't say anything, I'm not going to say anything. So he goes out to talk to the police and she runs out and she's screaming, "Please help me. He's raping me. He abducted me," like all these things. So they arrest him. He's charged with interstate kidnapping and rape. And when he talked to the police about this, he goes, "Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. This is the only way I can get my sexual gratification." And the police officer that arrested him and interviewed him at that time was like, "Oh, he can never get out. Like I knew he would continue to commit these types of crimes because he said that's the only way he can get sexual gratification." And Katie was like, "I thought he was going to be put away for forever for what he did to me." So he was given 50 years in federal prison for kidnapping and a life sentence in Nevada for rape. Fantastic. Good job on you, Nevada. He goes to Leavenworth Prison in Kansas. And, Katie was like, "I wanted to stop this, happening to anyone else. And, maybe that's why he was put in my path to put him away." But unfortunate, a life sentence, you guys, remember this, 50 years in federal prison and a life sentence in Nevada. However, he convinced the parole board to release him early after serving only 11 years. He never should have been out of prison, ever. And I will die on this hill. I will die on this hill. If you take a human as if they are your own, as if they are your property, you take a human from where they are and you take it for your own, you are going to continue to offend. When you abduct a human like that and say, I see that and it is now mine, it being a human life, that's a life sentence. That has to be a life sentence and you can't get out. Now, the justice system needs to work the way it's supposed to, and it needs to be a good, solid conviction, and we need to be sure we got the right person, but you can't get out because you're going to do that shit again. I'll die on that hill. I'll die on that hill every time. I really will. He ends up getting married while in prison to Nancy Bocanegra, who is now Nancy Garrido, the wife who helps him abduct little kids. Great. 15 years after she's abducted, Jaycee is now 27 years old. She'd been living in Garrido's backyard for 15 years. She grew up in a makeshift tent compound. She gave birth to 2 daughters who by this point were 13 and 9. And now she's been put to work by the Garridos. And they call her Alyssa, remember? So she became the creative force in his home printing business. He started a home printing business. Good for him. What an entrepreneur. But she would talk to customers on the phone. She would sometimes answer the door. I mean, like, this is her life now. It's so sad. Now, remember, Philip was arrested and got all that time, but he got out early on parole, right? So he's still on parole. So parole officers had to check in on him all the time. They made at least 50 visits to his home beginning in the year 2000. And when they would visit, Jaycee was nowhere to be found. However, none of their visits resulted in a violation. Now, they didn't see Jaycee in the house, but you got to see pictures of the compound in the backyard because it looks like it's just something that as a parole officer, you would be like, I need to look around in there, sir. He never did. And on one visit, one of the parole officers actually came face to face with one of the girls. And when he asked, who is this girl? She's 12. Now, he's not supposed to be around children. He's a convicted sex offender. And he doesn't have any children. His parole officer knows this. Philip says, oh, that's my niece. It's my brother's daughter. And so the parole officer was like, oh, well, sounds reasonable. He never called the brother. He never verified it. Like, none of that was true, obviously. Jaycee says that a parole officer at one point spoke directly to her. Like, they had seen her before and nobody ever asked any questions. Oh my gosh. At this point, Pat, Philip's mother, was diagnosed with Parkinson's and dementia and was very sick. Jaycee, Philip, and Nancy would take turns like caring for her. And Jaycee said that she was known to Pat as Alyssa, and the girls were brought over from down the street. She doesn't know how much Pat actually knew about her and the girls, and she thinks that Pat just didn't want to see that side of her son. In 2006, a neighbor actually calls the police saying, hey, I'm seeing young girls in Philip Garrido's backyard. It's weird. It seems like they're not allowed to leave the house. It seems like they're not allowed to leave the backyard. It seems like they're living in tents back there. I don't think it's safe. I would like for somebody to go check on that. So the police respond and they say, hey, neighbors are seeing kids out here. They think they're at risk. What's going on with that? He's like, you know what? Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, whatever it is that he said to this officer persuaded the officer to be like, okay. He didn't even go in the backyard and look at anything. And he also did not inform Philip's parole officer, which he should have done. Not that the parole officer would have done jack fucking shit, but apparently he was supposed to have notified this person and he did not. By June of 2009, Jaycee has been missing for 18 years. She's now 29. She's known as Alyssa, and she's got a 15 and an 11-year-old. There was a customer named Janice that Garrido had done some business cards for, and she didn't like them. She said they were really bad. The word safety was misspelled. he was like, oh, my daughter did them. Call Alyssa, tell her what happened. She'll fix them. So Janice is like, I called Alyssa and she was like, oh, I'm really sorry. And she was super professional about it and all this kind of stuff. So they make the point that like Jaycee had contact with the outside world at this point, but she didn't try to escape, and how that is not unusual because after all this time, again, she identifies with her captor. And one of the things that Jaycee said, which really, 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 really broke my heart, was she was like, I never stopped thinking about my mom. I never stopped wanting to see my mom. Like that was the thing that she thought about all the time. I just want to see my mom again and things like that. She was like, but at a certain point, I thought, maybe she doesn't even remember me. She was like, now that I have kids, I know that that's not true. But there for a long time, I was like, what if she doesn't remember me? What if she forgot about me? Like, oh my God, it's so sad. But you also think like, well, maybe they moved on or maybe they didn't want me. They didn't look for me or, all the things. So you start to identify with your captor and you kind of start to accept that this is the life that you have. And he also did a lot of things to scare her about what could happen to her if she left, like, oh, the world out there is so scary and crazy and all this stuff. Like, obviously, he's the monster he's talking about, but it's kind of like that the devil you know and the devil you don't kind of thing. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children did not want her name to be forgotten. They don't close any cases until they know what happened to the missing child. So they would update Jaycee's photograph every few years with age progression. They would send those new photos out to law enforcement agencies and all the things. All right. As the years go on, Philip Garrido gets weirder and weirder, and he starts a blog called Voices Revealed and a church called God's Desire. He said God healed him of pornography, prostitution, the way that he treated children. He also claimed he would hear the voices of angels. He would get clients to sign affidavits about what he could hear through the angels. He thought he had some message to share with the world, like whatever. So he decides in August of 2009 that he wants to go to UC Berkeley and he wants to hold a religious event on campus. And while he's talking to the UC Berkeley police, the officer, Lisa Campbell, notices that he has 2 young girls with him. And her original concern was the dynamic between him and the girls. And she was like, they didn't act like they were in trouble. They seemed okay, but there was just something off about it. It just didn't make any sense. So she's like, you know what? I know who you need to talk to, but they're not here today. Can you come back tomorrow? Give me your name and all your information. I'll make sure they know, to expect you and all this stuff. He's like, great. So he gives her his information and then she looks him up to see who he is and she finds his record and he's on parole for kidnapping and rape. So later that day, he comes back because remember, he wants to do all this stuff. And by this point, the officers, they've checked his record and they're like, I don't know about this. So they call his parole officers and they mention the 2 daughters. And the parole officer is like, he doesn't have 2 daughters. So he starts getting concerned. So he calls Philip in for a meeting and he actually goes to the meeting with Jaycee, but he introduces her as Alyssa and she's an adult by now, right? Garrido says the kids belong to my brother. He lives nearby. And they're like, okay, well, we need to call your brother. He's like, ooh, I don't have his phone number. I just don't know how to get in touch with him. They end up questioning Jaycee and Philip Garrido. She changed her stories a couple times, but it never matched what he was saying. And so they're like, man, this is just, I don't know. They keep questioning him. And then he finally confesses that he had abducted Jaycee many years ago. He had raped her. And that's how the 2 children came to be. So they tell Alyssa, hey, this is what he told us. Is this your name? Because he's telling us you are Jaycee Dugard. And she says that like when they asked who she was again, like, hey, who, come on, like tell us who you are. He has told us, he said he kidnapped you. He says that he raped you. He says that those 2 little girls are your daughters, not Nancy's, like all this stuff. She said she couldn't say her name out loud because she hadn't said her real name in 18 years. So she wrote it down, Jaycee Lee Dugard, her date of birth and her mom's name. And then she was reunited with her daughters and they were taken to the Concord Police Department. The next day, Terry was notified that her daughter had been found alive. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? So they got to talk on the phone. Oh my gosh, you have to either read her account of this or watch her interviews or something. It's really amazing. And Jaycee was like, I don't remember what I said to her completely, but she was like, I did tell her that I had babies, and she said, come quick, and I love you. Oh my gosh. So Jaycee and the girls spent that night in a hotel, and Jaycee explained to them who their father really was and what he had done. And she said that they were surprisingly open about it and ultimately not really all that shocked. She did want to meet with her mom alone first and then ask that the girls be brought in later. And of course, they are all just super sweet, super close. Oh, it's really precious. And Jaycee said in the Diane Sawyer interview that she didn't really know how her mom would react to like her kids being, you know, the product of rape and all of these things. And her mom was like, those are my grandbabies. Like, I love them no matter what. It's just so sweet. Philip and Nancy Garrido were arrested. They were charged with kidnapping, child molestation, and conspiracy. 29 felony counts. They were remanded to El Dorado County Jail. Michaela Garrick was still missing. Hayward PD reopened the case, and they realized that the sketch of their suspect looked just like Philip Garrido. And the car being pulled off of his property at the time looked like the car Michaela was taken in. I mean, it seems plausible that Philip possibly and Nancy were the people who abducted Michaela, and then something happened and she's no longer alive. Jaycee does say that he never talked about other girls other than saying like, you're saving other girls from me doing this to them, basically. But he never told her that he had abducted and or killed anybody before. They try to look for evidence that might connect Philip to other missing person cases, but they're unable to find anything. And a psychologist was provided to Jaycee and her family so that they could rebuild their lives together. She writes a lot about the reunification process in her book. They didn't end up using traditional therapy, but they did use horses, and they do a lot of activities, exercises together as a family. Jaycee, the girls, Terry, and her sister. Jaycee has always connected with animals, and this was just really important to her and a way for her to heal. Philip Garrido's lawyer, though, filed a motion for them to have contact with Jaycee because they were a family, and he wanted to be able to talk to his daughters. Astonishing. Thankfully, the judge declined that and said, fuck you, in legal jargon. Per an article in the New York Times, Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years in prison, while Nancy got 36 years to life. Both waived the right to appeal as part of their sentences. At sentencing, Terry read a statement that said, quote, there is no God in the universe who would condone your actions. You stole my life and that of my family. And she also said, you do not matter anymore. And Jaycee ended up not speaking at the sentencing. Her mom read something that she had written as well, but Jaycee didn't go. And I completely do not blame her at all. On July 1st, 2010, California Assembly passed a bill giving Jaycee Dugard $20 million to settle her claims against the state's Department of Corrections. The settlement is reparations for the state's failed supervision of Philip Garrido. My God. The amount of times they came into contact with her and they were there and they all this. And then, you guys, the freaking parole officer kind of tried to take credit for, quote, solving this case, for finding Jaycee. Like when the department did their press conference after she was found, they were like, wow, thanks to all this police work and blah, blah, blah. No, it was the two security people, campus security officers that found Jaycee Dugard. Your parole officer didn't do shit. And he like pumped himself up and was like, wow, when they contacted me, I didn't have to look into it, but I did. So look at me. Good for me. I guess that's one way to look at it. I mean, I literally don't understand it. But that is the case, you guys. Let me know what you think. Were you familiar with this case? This is a name that I have heard a lot of times over the years, and I just did not know this whole story, and it is absolutely insane. I'm so, so glad she was found alive. Obviously not unharmed, but she at least does get to live the rest of her life. And $20 million? I mean, $20 million is nice. I bet she would take that 18 years back, though. Like, what in the world? What in the world? But I love you guys, and I'll see you next Tuesday. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.